So chapter 11 is called School Curricula and Standards. This chapter discusses what students learn from curriculum, how the school curriculum is developed, the influences on curriculum development, what role standards play in our own classrooms, how is standard-based education shaping school curricula, how is the Common Core State Standards Initiative changing U.S. education, and what controversies surround the effort to raise standards. So a general definition of curriculum refers to the experiences, both planned and unplanned, that either enhance or impede the education and growth of students. So there are 4 types of curricula. There's what teachers intend to teach, the hidden curriculum, the null curriculum, and the extracurricular/co-curricular programs. Curriculum content reflects the beliefs of society and what the larger society believes that young people should learn. Curricula are based on the needs and interests of students and also reflect a variety of professional, commercial, local, state, national, and international pressures. So the cognitive factors that are receiving more attention in school curricula are grit, which I know Angela Duckworth actually wrote a really great book on that called Grit, and I've heard her TED Talk where she just really stresses the importance of grit. Tenacity and perseverance, academic mindset, and mindfulness. And I've read about mindfulness too, and I've actually seen it, how that exercise can be implemented in the classroom. Last week I did an observation at a high school in a professional development class where a teacher had her students, she let them know, that mindfulness is useful, and there have been schools around the country that have seen a decrease in discipline problems once they started to incorporate mindfulness and meditation exercises. So she kind of introduced it, and then she let her students know that the expectations were that they were going to close their eyes, they were going to not fidget, and they were going to turn their chairs to the wall so they wouldn't, even be tempted to be distracted. And so the exercise was 10 minutes long, and once it started, the teacher turned off the lights and she began playing this YouTube video that had a very calming voice, play with calming music where the voice was just saying positive affirmations for the students to hear. And so the whole thing lasted 10 minutes, and when it was done, the teacher kind of asked for input and asked what the students thought. And a lot of them felt like it was really useful, like they were able to be still and quiet and in the moment and almost just forget where they were at. They got caught up in the whole experience. And I did notice that it happened in the morning. So at the end, it was very, very relaxing. A lot of students were yawning. They became so relaxed after that exercise. So it definitely seemed to help her class relax and kind of ease into the activities she had for them that day. So, and another thing I've been noticing that's been coming up, a movement has been on growth mindset, which was developed by Carol Dweck from Stanford. And she just talks about how we need to change our thinking, and we need students to change their thinking. And a growth mindset says, I can develop my abilities, challenges help me grow, feedback is constructive, and effort is necessary. Whereas a fixed mindset says, either I can do it or I can't. I stick to what I know. I don't like receiving feedback. If I'm frustrated, I give up. So that kind of touches on so many areas. Grit, tenacity, perseverance, and it's definitely something that's catching movement, and where I wholeheartedly believe in that approach, and I think it needs to be fully incorporated into schools around the country. So how is the school curriculum developed? Many schools develop curricula by addressing the 4 questions in the Tyler rationale. What educational purposes should the student seek to attain? What educational experiences can be provided that are likely to attain these purposes? How can these educational experiences be organized effectively? And how can we determine whether these purposes are being attained? Curriculum planning focuses on the continuum between the macro level and the micro level, and on a continuum between the present and the future. Curricula vary in the degree to which they are student-centered or subject-centered, and an integrated curriculum draws from several different subject areas and focuses on a theme or concept rather than a single subject. So again, I feel like the whole growth mindset idea can be applicable to any subject, and it's something that can be useful in so many ways. It really emphasizes the power of yet. So, if you're in a math class and you're struggling, you're in calculus and you're struggling to grasp the concept, the important thing to remember is that you may not have mastered the content yet. You might not understand yet. That's not to write off the subject altogether and say, oh, I'm not good at math. That's a fixed mindset. Where a growth mindset says, I'm not there yet. So what influences curriculum development? Community pressures, court decisions, student life situations, testing results, national reports, teachers, professional organizations, textbook publishing, and educational research. Grit, Angela Duckworth's book has been credited to grit a lot, and of course the growth mindset to Carol Dweck. So what role will standards play in your classroom? Standards at the state and national levels are part of the movement to hold educators and schools more accountable for student learning. School administrators, teachers, and students have different perspectives on standards. Administrators are primarily concerned with student performance on standardized tests of achievement. Teachers are primarily concerned with student performance and behavior at the classroom level, and students are primarily concerned with the learning being personally relevant and interesting and meaningful. So those kind of seem like competing interests at times, because the principal might put a huge focus on making sure that the students test well, more than anything else, more than the experience, more than learning for the long term. It can become an issue of just learning to pass tests. Being able to regurgitate information to pass tests. And they have a lot riding on it. I mean, administrators who have failing schools risk getting replaced or removed from the school. And then teachers have a lot riding on these test scores too. Now, I know in New Mexico, if a student doesn't test well, that can affect our evaluation, which is tied to our license. And, if you're on a waiver like myself and you have a bad evaluation, the PED, the Public Education Department, can deny my waiver. And so there's a lot riding on student performance. And then you have the students who want to learn in an enjoyable way. They want to know things that are interesting and meaningful. And so it's really trying to find a balance. And while we might not be able to escape the standards, or, we might have to work with them, we as teachers can make the student experience, we can teach them in the most interesting, creative ways possible. And so that's what I really want to focus on as a teacher. And standard-based education shapes schools. It develops rigorous academic standards. It assesses students' mastery of those standards, and holding students and teachers accountable for meeting those standards are key elements of standard-based education, which I understand accountability is a good thing. But of course, there's so many other factors to consider. It's not like if people get penalized for not performing. And it talks about that later on in the chapter where it says, so how is the Common Core State Standards Initiative changing U.S. education? Well, it's super controversial, and it talks about No Child Left Behind, and schools were to provide evidence each year that students were making adequate yearly progress. Students that failed to make adequate schools that fail to make adequate yearly progress will be identified as in need of improvement. And I know here in the state we have the A, B, C, D, F grading system where schools are rated. And so, it's it's tough, especially if you have like a high grade one year, your school has to test even higher than that to at least maintain that grade. So that can be tough. For teachers, administrators, and schools, high-stake test results can be linked to merit awards, increased funding, or sanctions. And like I said, it can affect your ability to teach. If you're depending on how many poor evaluations you've gotten, and so it's really, really it's a very delicate situation. And so teachers have to really make sure that they are able to keep up with that. So chapter 12 talks about assessing student learning. What is the role of assessment in teaching? Effective schools frequently and systematically assess student learning. Classroom assessment of student learning enables teachers to make judgments about the performance of students and about their own performance as teachers. Assessment is a process that provides teachers with information about the effectiveness of their teaching and students with information about their learning. Going back to the growth mindset, Carol Dweck, in one of her talks, she says that there was a school, I believe it was in Chicago, who, when students would fail, instead of giving a failing grade, the school would give them like on their report card or whatever, it would say not yet. So it's really focused on, I feel like it's focused on the student and just how teachers can get them to where they need to be. But it's not a failing. Failure is not final. It's not like, oh, you failed, you're done, you're going to drop out of high school, you might as well, you're not going to succeed. It's not like that. It's not a final thing. It's something that they can grow from. So I think assessment is important, but I don't think it's the be-all, end-all for students. It shouldn't be. How are standardized assessments used in education? Standardized assessments are pencil paper tests taken by large groups of students and are scored in a uniform manner. Norm referenced assessments compare student scores with scores of other students who are similar. Criterion referenced assessments compare student learning with clearly defined criteria or standards. What are high-stakes tests and accountability? State-mandated tests often have the high-stakes consequences for students, such as determining eligibility to participate in extracurricular activities or even to graduate. And teachers and schools can, those test results can be linked to merit rewards, increased funding, or sanctions. And and there's been a lot to show. The book talks about the achievement gap between white students and minority students and students from low-income families, and these tests can unfairly highlight achievement differences between students who attend resource-rich schools and those who attend resource-poor schools. High-stakes tests increase the likelihood that the minority group student and students from low-income families will drop out. What methods will you use to assess student learning? To assess student learning,